Chip Kelly and his coaching staff finally have UCLA on the right track, heading towards the conference championship. And on the other side, first-year head coach Dan Lanning doing a great job with Oregon. They've been dominant after their bad Week 1 loss to UGA. It's crazy. Right when the Pac-12, starts to get really competitive, USC and UCLA are heading to the Big Ten. That's kind of unfortunate for the Pac-12. But as far as this year goes, the Pac-12 is wide open for a couple teams. Like I just mentioned, it's been really competitive. But Drew, kicking it to you, you're the big Georgia fan, so you've seen Bo Nix play probably every single game he's played in college. So what are your thoughts on this Oregon offense, which is heavily centered around Bo Nix?
Yeah, Bo Nix has played really, really well this year after the UGA game, obviously. I think Bo Nix, one of the main reasons he probably transferred to the Pac-12 is that a lot of those Pac-12 defenses just don't have the same speed as a normal SEC defense had. And that's why you saw Georgia have a lot of success containing Bo Nix and really just limiting him to doing absolutely nothing in that game. Everyone knows Bo Nix has the ability to run around and make crazy plays with his legs, escape the contain, escape pressure, then throw downfield 20 yards. Bo Nix is a talented quarterback, but at the same time, he's not playing any Pac-12 defenses that really can contain him well. They play some good defenses, but like I said earlier, they just don't have the speed. But Bo Nix has looked really good as a passer too, and I don't want to just say like he's just a runner, but he has passed the ball really well. He's been very accurate this year. He's at 1,500 passing yards this year, and I think it was about 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So overall, just a pretty good start for Bo Nix, and he's going to definitely be a big impact in this game against UCLA, who is also kind of relatively the same. They have a good offense, but struggle on defense, but a little bit more Oregon. Their run game has been impressive this year as well. They have a couple guys, or 3 guys really, that are averaging over 6 yards per carry. Bucky Irving, Noah Whittington, those are guys that average about 6.5 yards per carry, and both have a couple touchdowns. And again, Bo Nix, mentioning about his legs, 331 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns. 8 running touchdowns on the year is really impressive. And he's going to have to find ways to run the ball against this UCLA defense, and that's really going to open up the Oregon offense, and I think it's going to give him the upper hand.
Yeah, that threat of that run game, like you mentioned, really gives the playmakers on the perimeter for Oregon an opportunity to make plays, and it gives Bo Nix time in the pocket. Or, like you mentioned, there's not as much speed in the Pac-12, so if he does roll out on some boot actions or something, he's not as pressured. He doesn't always have a guy in his face, which, of course, he was a little oppressed at Auburn at times, which Auburn now we see isn't the greatest program in the SEC, so he was definitely hindered there. But transitioning to UCLA's offense, Chip Kelly's done a great job. Now, he's received backlash, of course, from the NFL or his failures in the NFL, but if you're talking about a college coach, there is not many better that do offense than Chip Kelly. I mean, he really is a genius. And you're seeing this now with Schubernay or however you say the running back's name. He's an NFL talent. Chip Kelly and that coaching staff has developed him into an NFL running back. And, he doesn't have the size or the archetype that you would necessarily think would be in the league, but he's definitely definitely going to be playing on Sundays. And then their quarterback, DTR, he's really, really stepped it up. I mean, he's been playing outside of himself. His footwork in the pocket, it's outstanding. And Chip Kelly really has this offense humming. As far as this matchup with this Oregon defense goes, though, I mean, it's no secret this Oregon defense is probably the best in the Pac-12. I mean, Sewell he's been one of the best linebackers in the Pac-12, dominating offenses for a while now. And then Justin Flo, he's finally healthy, and he's had a chance to get a couple games under his belt, and you can tell his last couple of games he's been playing way more confident. He's been getting more and more snaps. He's just starting to play better and better, and of course the pass rush that Oregon has is great. So you're really going to have your best performance from DTR and Schubernay to beat this Oregon defense.
Yeah, DTR's had a terrific season. A lot of y'all, I don't know how many of y'all watched the show QB1. It actually was the first season. I think DTR was in it. Behind Tate Martell. Tate Martell was the main star of the show, but DTR was his backup at Bishop Gorman in high school. He didn't even play a down in high school football, came into UCLA, and has had a lot of experience and improved year by year, and now he's one of the top quarterbacks in the Pac-12. And about Oregon's defense, I'm glad you mentioned how good they are. I know statistically people are going to look at that Oregon defense and be like, oh, they're not very good. They give up a lot of yards. They give up a lot of touchdowns. But like you said, they have so much talent across the board. They can show up, in big-time games at any moment. This Oregon defense can eventually click, and I'm honestly assuming that this Oregon defense is just going to get better game by game by game. And I don't know, people are really sleeping on Oregon after that Week 1 beating the UGA, but they're a really, really good football team. Especially offensively, they put up 40 points or more in every single game since the Georgia game. Regardless of who they played, you could only play the opponents that are on your schedule. But if you're putting up 40 points every single week, you have a pretty good offense. Now, UCLA, on the other hand, also has a pretty decent offense. They're, putting up relatively around 40 points a game. I think they're at 41.5 is the official stat line for how many points they're putting up per game. Obviously, the concerning win against South Alabama where they won by 1 point, people will look at that and kind of wonder what UCLA team you're going to get in this game.
In the Washington game, I thought that UCLA did a great job moving the ball down the field and converting on third downs, 3rd and 6 and longer. They did a great job of converting. DTR was finding guys open in the middle of the field. Number 9, especially, they do a great job of getting him open off of play actions and finding ways to get him the ball schematically. But whenever I look at this Oregon defense, you mentioned the numbers might not be as good. They get stops when they need it. They were down 2 or 3 possessions in the fourth quarter to Washington State and, forced turnovers, forced punts, and enable their offense to get them the win. And I think that the defense for Oregon is going to keep improving. We know Dan Lanning is a defensive guy, and he comes from the SEC. And with his scheme, they do run a lot more man. And in the Pac-12, they throw the ball 60 times a game. It's a big ask for your corners to be guarding these receivers, press man or man coverage for that many snaps. But they're continuing to improve every week. And like you mentioned, you can only play the guys on your schedule. But other than Georgia, this is going to be their biggest task offensively. Chip Kelly's going to have a lot of stuff for this Oregon defense. It's no secret that he's a mastermind when it comes to the scheme and calling plays.
Yeah, and both teams are currently undefeated in the Pac-12. A win here really puts either team ahead of the 8 ball, in this case in terms of making a Pac-12 title game. UCLA, I think they can run the table and make the playoffs, obviously. Oregon probably still win out and make the playoffs too. I just find it – I'm not confident that a one-loss Pac-12 team is going to get in. But anything could happen. It all depends on what happens in front of them. Oregon can't afford to lose this game, though, in terms of if they're trying to make the playoffs. 2-loss Pac-12 team is definitely not getting in. I think Oregon knows that. Dan Lanning knows that, and the players know that. Bo Nix, his final year in college football, I think Oregon's going to come out. They're going to play like everything's on the line, and they should, because like I just said, if they lose this game, they're pretty much eliminated from playoff contention. And I think this Oregon team, they have the talent to be a playoff contender, not a national title contender, I don't think, but a playoff contender for sure. Oregon, I don't think there's a better home crowd in the Pac-12 than Oregon. Oregon's one of the only teams I could think of in the Pac-12 that actually gets a good turnout for those games. The fans show up. And UCLA's only had one true road game this year, and that was at a terrible Colorado team. So, this is going to be a different environment for UCLA. Chip Kelly's coached in a lot of these big-time games, though. DTR is a very experienced quarterback, so that those two things might even out. Oregon 6-point favorites. I don't know. I think Oregon does win the game, but I just think it's just going to be one of those shootout games that kind of comes down to a last-second field goal. We see a lot of Pac-12 games in like 45-42, 44-41. I can completely see a scenario where this game's like that. I do think Oregon kind of scrapes by with the win here, but UCLA is going to keep it closer than the 6 points. This is going to be a great football game, and if you don't usually watch the Pac-12, I think this is a game people should watch. I think this is one of the Pac-12 games that people should actually be interested in.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned the home field advantage. I think that's definitely going to play a factor in how this game's going to shake out. And, you mentioned DTR having experience playing in, big games. He's been there for, many years. But it's different when you're not in contention versus when you are in contention. And this is going to be a packed house in Oregon. And, like you mentioned, Bo Nix is in his last year. This defense has been playing better and better. And I really do trust this Dan Lanning defense for Oregon, and I think that they are going to cover. I think they're going to lean on the run game, and it's going to enable Bo Nix to do what he does and just get out the pocket, make plays, use his legs. So I'm going to take Oregon to cover in this. But I agree with what you said. This is going to be a great game. We haven't seen the Pac-12 this deep in years. Like, there is a bunch of teams that can win the Pac-12, and if the top 3 teams each have a loss, it's really wide open. But with all that said, I think Oregon's going to cover this.
Yeah, and last thing I want to say, I said it in the last video as well, the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are just two conferences that are very competitive, but it's almost like those teams are just going to beat each other up so bad to the point where none of these conferences are going to be able to send a team to the playoffs, because UCLA and Oregon can finish the season both with 2 losses apiece. And, these are really good football teams, but there's just so many good teams within the conference that they're almost just going to devour each other. But, games like this, UCLA, this is one of those must-win games. It's going to be a great game, and I'm really excited to watch this, actually. But if you haven't already, guys, please leave a thumbs up on the video, comment, and share your opinions on the game. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We really do appreciate you guys, especially those of y'all who have been around for a little bit supporting the channel. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. We'll see you in the next one.